Well, hi everyone. Maybe we wait 1 or 2 more minutes, but I thought we start with a simple question in the audience, and I hope English is fine for everyone. Oh, okay. So, today it's all about procurement ecosystems and procurement transformation. So, who has already a procurement suite in place? Like Ariba, Wawrla, Coupa, no one? Who uses Excel and Outlook for sourcing? Yes. And who's in between, who works with a startup and maybe has already first experience in procurement transformation? No one. All right. Great. However, we will still talk about it, and I will share my vision or our vision on that topic. And I thought I will just start with a bit of a journey back, how we ended up in that ecosystem and how I'm back, yes, and how this actually impacts the whole procurement ecosystem as a whole. So when we started in 2019 as a spin-off of ETH Zurich, we just wanted to empower procurement teams to make better sourcing decisions faster. So it's about, if you're collecting offers during tenders, you get a lot of Excel sheets back. You need to understand these offers, and you want to make data-based, holistic decisions. Now, this sounds super simple and straightforward. And the first thing we did, and actually this was 3 years back, was we printed out all the names of all the companies in the market, and we pinged them to a wall. And now you see we have Wawrla there, Tradeshift, Ariba, Coupa, etc. Because we thought these are all our competitors. Now, obviously, we had big dreams in the beginning, but we quickly realized that we called them competitors, but actually we need to look at them as partners. And we started to understand that we're not alone in that whole ecosystem, and there are already a lot of players out there. And if we have a quick look into the plan to pay or source to pay process, which I'm pretty sure you're very familiar with, we see that there are so many steps which are part of the whole procurement process. It starts with spend analysis. It goes ahead with category strategy. You do spend tracking or saving trackings. Then maybe you start an event and start an RFX, so you're in the source to contract. You collect the bids, you negotiate, you make decisions, contracts, and then you start onboarding suppliers, issue POs, PRs, and in the end pay them. Now, in addition, there are tons of other things, like all these, I have slides here as well, sorry. All the supplier relationship management topics, all the third-party providers who provide additional data. So there are many, many things. And we realized, well, we're not the only ones again, and we're only solving a part of the whole process. A part of the whole ecosystem is what we can do and is what we focus on. Now, said that, again, we came across that if we want to provide holistic sourcing decisions, we need additional inputs. Because how do you make decisions in sourcing? It's not only price. You want to look at qualification metrics. You want to look at sustainability. You want to look at risk. You might want to know how much spend you had with your suppliers in the past or with other projects you run. So there's much more about just doing a decision on price, and therefore ecosystems are key. And again, finding we can't do this alone. Now, I'm sure some of you are into the topic of procurement transformation, and in the last 7 years, 280 startups arose in that sector. So you might feel lost, because if you look at that specific graph, that's not even 10% of the startups out there. So there are many, many, many solutions, and there are even more coming. So we asked ourselves, how can we make sense out of all these inputs and all these solutions, and how can we build ecosystems which hopefully in the end add value for the end user? And there are several options how you can actually look at ecosystems or partnerships. We can look at strategy partnerships. We have people-based partnerships, such as consultant-driven partnerships, technology partners, or also processes where you kind of try to link things together. But if we have a closer look, we can kind of boil it down to 3 main ecosystems. We have ecosystems of individuals, which we have the Sustainable Procurement Pledge. If you're not part of it yet, please look it up and apply for membership there. We have ecosystems of companies, where in this specific example, it's Together for Sustainability, where companies go together, audit companies for sustainability metrics, and then share these metrics with each other. So it's kind of an ecosystem between companies who have one vision, make better sourcing decisions and more sustainable. Last but not least, this is why we are here today, is the technology ecosystems, where we can look at different solution providers, different suite providers, and how they can actually work together to fulfill the vision to add value in procurement. Now, they are again, if we now deep dive into these technology ecosystems, we see three main options. You can say, well, I go with a suite. I take the whole process from the start to the end with one solution providers. Now, obviously, there are not many you can choose, because no one can, or almost no one can, cover all the steps we've just seen. However, it's an option. We have the best of breed approach, which I know quite a buzzword. Every one of you probably already heard it, where you kind of plug and play different startups or different solutions for these focus areas. And now, what we would like to look at in more detail is a combination of both. Maybe there is a suite at your core, and you plug in point solutions which actually add value in that specific process. And let's start quickly with the best of breed. The best of breed, I would say, is the most controversial, but also the most pitched solution, because in the end, if you walk around the booth here, every startup and every company or every solution provider focuses on a specific part of the process. And it can look quite scattered, but it does not have to look quite scattered. But now let's go from left to right. So spend analytics, we will also in a second welcome Mika from Sievo on stage to share his perspective. We have a category intelligence options. We can track savings through Perangusta, which Frank is here as well. He will share us as well. But these are just selections, right? And there are many, many, many others. And I think only here we have more than 50 exhibitors. So there is a lot to do. Now, the biggest cons of a best of breed, what we hear always is, how should I manage all of these stakeholders? Because I have a contact person at Sievo, I have one at Archlet, one at Syrian Labs. I need to keep the guys at Ariba happy, and in addition, EcoVadis wants to provide more scores in quicker time. So that's a challenge we hear often. How do I manage all these stakeholders? Another challenge we hear is, how do I integrate them? It's just like something here, something there. Does it make sense for an end user perspective, or is it actually just more tasks or more burden for me as an end user? And there was a very interesting change last year. Actually, two of the big suites launched an app store, Ariba and Coupa. Both went live with an SAP store and a Coupa store. Now, app stores we know very well from Apple, where Apple provides the interface, the phone, and everyone else can provide value through a point solution such as all the apps we know. And this is now also happening in procurement. And just to pause here, that's an amazing shift, because this also enables companies which are not focusing on the whole process to add on top these solution providers and actually add value where they are good at or even best at. If we now have a look, you will realize that for example, a suite is more dominant. So you could say, I use a tool such as Ariba as my core for P2P, for SRM, for onboarding, etc. And I enhance it only with a few point solutions to increase value and actually fulfill the picture that I still can leverage these best of breed solutions, but I have a suite at the core. Now, this is a rather new setup, and there are not many companies pursuing it, because, as said, it's only live since last year, since 2021. But we are a bit advocate of it, just because it enables companies to be more agile and flexible. And in the end, as we've learned before, if we want to work on how we can add the biggest value to the end user, the actual procurement manager or sourcing manager or the actual operational person, we need to think about how we can ease these processes in the best possible way. Now, enough talking from my side and enough theory. We have also prepared a quick or a panel discussion with 2 additional speakers. So I would love to ask, who should I ask first? Mika and Frank, yeah, you can come, both of you, on stage. Maybe a quick applause for them joining. So we have Frank from Per Angusta, originally French-based company, but already around more than 10 years in the procurement sector, more than 300 clients, so much more experience than I just shared with you. And we have Mika, all the way coming from Helsinki, from Sievo, partnership manager, and actually Sievo is around since 2003, where in a time where all the suites were founded. We had Ariba starting 1998, we had Jagger and Coupa starting around 2003, 2006, and Sievo started as a point solution, which is something amazing. Now they are almost 300 people and actually do quite an amazing job. So what we want to discuss is how to best integrate startups into your procurement transformation, but also just learn a bit what you guys have experienced so far, because I know that after 10 years in the market, after 16 years in the market, you came across more challenges and more solutions than us after 3 years in the market. So the first question I wanted to ask you, and please also, we will pass some questions to the audience. Think with us, because it should be a bit interactive. What we've seen in the last years was a lot of disruption. And what people ask us, especially with all the crises ongoing, is did that mindset of, or the approach, how we treat these procurement landscapes and ecosystems change in the last 2 years? And I think you, Frank, have a very strong opinion about that mindset change, and maybe you can elaborate a bit what you think about it.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Lukas. Can you hear me? Yeah, okay. I think a lot of things have changed because people were forced to change by the war and COVID and Ukraine and China. So I feel that transformation has accelerated over the last 2 years significantly. Before Per Angusta, I have been 20 years in consulting, so I know a little bit how people approach transformation. And I've seen a lot of procurement leaders saying, first we do the big approach using a big suite, that this takes me 3 years, yeah, but in parallel I cannot do nothing because I don't have the span of resources to handle anything else. But in the last 2 years, people got forced to move much faster, to think out of the box, and to go into places they have never dared to go before. Working with smaller companies, working maybe with vendors that only have a couple of clients, but that provide a solution nobody else is providing. And when you see what's happening here on this summit, all the other summits we saw in the last couple of months, that there's so many great solutions around. It's hard to understand what they do, but on the other hand, they can solve so many problems so quickly with maybe a couple of days and weeks implementation. And for those who are reading Spend Matters, there's a new theory coming up on alternative suites, alt suites. That's not the source to pay process, but there are a lot of 4 or 5 different processes coming up that are on the one hand complementary, on the other hand much, much deeper than the current source to pay process that build even additional ecosystems. So worth to read, and then you get a completely different view on that.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, Frank, and I totally agree that the digital transformation has been accelerating over the past 2 years since all the different actions that have happened. But we actually had a customer event a couple of weeks ago, and we had a really nice chance to discuss what are the top priorities for procurement leaders at the moment. And definitely the resilience in procurement is something that has really come on top of the priorities now. And I think these last events have really exposed the companies and organizations who weren't able to react and adapt to these new external situations. And I think this has really forced the organizations to think their existing tool setup and solution setup that is this really serving my strategic needs of the procurement, and how about the emerging technologies and solutions that can support me in this digital transformation journey. So I think this past 2 years has really accelerated things and critical thinking about how you build your technical setup and how you drive the digital transformation forward.
And thank you, guys. I think what's also impressive is that, again, we have this disruption since the last 2 years, but more than 100 startups came across in procurement and supply chain. So I was asking myself why, and maybe also the cons we hear that you add on additional solutions on a suite. Does it help us to be more agile, or is it a burden to actually move quicker? Because there are both options, right? You could argue, well, in crisis, I want to focus on one person and one supplier and put everything I have on it, treat the relationship as good as possible, and every distraction you have with other things might distract you too much. So what we always argue, and it's really to be debatable, and that's why I hope we can include a few comments from you soon, is how can focused solutions or point solutions drive that flexibility without risking to distract companies too much?
Yeah, I can take this first. So for me, how I see the agility is the ability to react what's going on, and of course adapting to it. So reacting, of course, what's going on. And I think that it's difficult for maybe one solution to fill all the needs of all the specific needs of your procurement organization. And I think mixing solutions and bringing innovation to your technical landscape can really enhance your agility and ability to react and see how exposed your organization is to these external factors that are coming in. And I definitely see that there's a midway how you can mix your technology to bring this sort of from insight to action and bridge the gap between the two. So having the visibility over your organization and how that is exposed to external events, and then of course from those insights how you can take action and the time to action. I think that is the components that are really driving the agility for your organization. So
time to action in sense that you can set it up quickly and start it running after a few days, or instead of a few months or years. Or
it really depends of the magnitude of how you build your tech stack. So how complex is your procurement landscape and IT landscape, for example? Obviously, large organizations, it may become quite complex, and if you really want to have visibility to your organization, I encourage to do it properly first, rather than rushing it quickly for some ad hoc solution to a specific event that's going on, and instead build something more tangible and long-term that you can really leverage when the next new thing emerges. So I think some things need to be done properly, and of course this is something that, of course, time to value. So how quick is the implementation time of a new solution? That's also critical. But I think at the end of the day, what I mean with agility is that when the new thing comes, what is your reaction time, and how quickly you can react and do something about it. So I guess there's two ways of looking at the agility in a sense.
Yes, it makes sense. Frank?
But agility also has a deep requirement that means resources. You have your problems which are there, you might have a solution, but there needs to be people trained, educated, available, analytical background to be able to handle those new tools. And I think it needs careful planning, what to do when and first. And I think mainly the problems, or the magnitude of the problems, are driving those roadmaps, and not what normally you do in a standard situation. I think we are not in a standard situation currently, so I think agility also in how you decide and what your priorities are is key.
And maybe question to the audience. I see some companies, I know you're using a kind of already a hybrid approach. Is there someone who wants to share or add a question or also an input to how this combination can add agility? Or do I now put someone on the spot? I tried to hint a bit in this direction or in that, but there's no necessarily. Is there, maybe we can look in the audience if there's a question as well? Yes? Or a comment?
Yeah, maybe a question. So I think you were explaining the whole landscape. So I always asking myself, okay, how can we get better in predicting things? I mean, I don't speak about predictive analytics or so. I speak about predicting what's coming next, where we face problems. Yeah? To be agile, you are reacting, but maybe it's possible to see upcoming challenges earlier. So do you have in mind here some software, some other things, what is nowadays helping, having the crystal ball?
Yeah, of course. I think, nobody can predict the future for, in an accurate manner, but of course it's really important to identify that the future is always coming, so you need to be like resilient for what's coming. And of course there's lots of applications for looking ahead, whether it's like price developments for commodities or whether you want to prepare beforehand for some natural disasters, etc. There's multiple ways of looking at this, and I think it really depends what your application for building your predictability in your organization, and there's probably a lot of solutions for those applications out there. So it's difficult to name one to cover all the prediction needs or all the different applications for it. But I think it's really important to ensure that your organization is prepared when something happens, and maybe that's the way I'm thinking. But I also can take if there's counter arguments, but
not really a counter argument. I think when an organization needs to be prepared, they have to also accept reality and not everything see it on the positive side. I read a nice article this morning in the newspaper where it was said that the German army cannot even stand 2 days in a war because there's no ammunition. Because they did not source any ammunition, nobody thought about they would need it beside Afghanistan. So they have to rebuild in the next 5 years the supply chain for ammunition. Because nobody thought reality, what we face, is really real. I think it's the same thing for procurement. I think you have to understand fully where you stand as a company in procurement and then work from there, not say, oh, everything will be fine. So I think that's a big mistake that's coming. And then you need those tools, but you have to also accept reality.
Yeah, that's a great point. So again, being aware of what's going on right now in the world, and again, mitigating the risks, and having the visibility of how exposed your supply chain is for these potential upcoming risks or events, and again, being prepared for those. So I think that was a really good point, Frank.
And I would like to ask if we can put back the slides quickly. If that's working, nice. Because we are here to pitch a hybrid ecosystem, and thank you so much, Frank, for joining us. Thanks, Mika. And part of that is also embracing you to be open, have an open mindset for new solutions. So we actually thought that if we end early, it's actually a good thing, because you have more time now to walk through the booths, get some coffee, get some conversations ongoing. Because what we try to achieve all together is kind of that we stay focused on your goal. We all want to achieve the same. However you do it, there are many ways to go, and I think you will find the best for you. Keep an open mind, and we heard that as well, and be sure that you're flexible enough that you can maybe even predict things which upcome, and also be flexible. And I hope with these 3 takeaways from the perspectives we had. We gave you something with on your way. Also, of course, feel free to walk by for coffee. There's also a bar tonight, so maybe we can chat even there. So just have fun, be open, walk through the summit as it's the last one. Obviously it's not, but enjoy. I hope, or do you have anything else to add? No? Thank you so much. I think from our side that would be it.
So, and all I have to do is say thank you for this deep insight in procurement transformation. Big applause, please, for this panel. Thank you so much.